Hello, YouTube, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have 5 articles for you in this episode, and all the URLs are in the description of this video for your convenience if you want to pull them up to do further research. The first one that I have here is off of All News Pipeline, and it says the enemies of America within are still within. John McCain's ties to George Soros and ISIS prove America is still in danger as globalists become desperate to bring down President Trump by any way possible. The recent story from USA Today reports Arizona Senator John McCain has come out swinging against President Donald Trump and his new administration soon after McCain won another 6-year term in the Senate, his 6th term in office. McCain, who back on December the 29th of 2016 was reported to be seeking stronger sanctions against Russia, has also just warned Trump he'll fight him on his plans of lifting sanctions against him. In a new story over the Gateway Pundit, they report George Soros-funded Media Matters is secretly working with Facebook to fight fake news, aka anything that isn't globalist propaganda. According to an explosive report released by Washington Free Beacon, the radical group is assisting Facebook with helping them identify what they deem to be propaganda and fake news, and what many are calling a clampdown on free speech and boxing out of conservative media on social media giant. In another story published over the Daily Mail that the Drudge Report linked to back on January the 12th, that had the Drudge headline, Demented McCain turns dirty. We see McCain admit, I did what any citizen should do after he turned over the Golden Shower smear dossier on Trump to the FBI. Doing so, even though he admitted he had no idea whatsoever if the information it contained was credible. We see McCain's behavior akin to that of snowflakes melting down in the streets of America and Starbucks coffee shops. Senator John McCain pushing fake news within the U.S. Capitol. As we learn below, there's a very good reason for that. The story came out on WND, written by Jerome Corsi, all the way back on February the 12th of 2008, reported that McCain has long been funded by, of all people, George Soros, dating back to at least 2001. Corsi reported then that McCain had founded an Alexandria, Virginia-based institute called the Reform Institute, under which it received funding from Soros, Open Society Institute. McCain was even forced to cut his ties to the Reform Institute when he ran for president back in 2008, but by then the damage was done. The Reform Institute proves that Senator McCain is another Soros stooge. With Trump now firmly in office, why should we be concerned? As we see in the news headlines below from all across America over the first week of Trump's presidency, massive cases of Trump derangement syndrome are breaking out everywhere, with more and more people calling for Trump to be impeached, removed from office, or otherwise taken down. And knowing Senator McCain's ties to ISIS terrorists, as outlined below, and his past as a songbird that is more than happy to sing, gives us great reason to be concerned about where his loyalty lies. 1 week into Trump's presidency, the MSM is still in total meltdown mode. Satanic liberal Hollywood has also picked a fight with our new president. CNN's own president recently made a veiled threat at Trump while confirming that CNN is more than happy to push fake news about him. As Susan Duclos reported days ago, nasty man-hating women are also going on an all-out offensive against Trump. Most of the groups also funded by George Soros are shared in this story and the third video below, while leftist lunatics calling for love torch cars and outright verbally or physically attack anybody who doesn't see eye to eye with them. Duclos tells us in the first video below, with the mainstream media still happy to push fake news, most recently with the Washington Post claiming that the entire upper tier of U.S. State Department had resigned when in all actuality they had been fired. we see that the enemies of America within are going nowhere and are fighting on. As Stephen K. Bannon recently called them, the MSM is the opposition party, completely beholden to Hillary Clinton during the election. It appears the MSM will stop at nothing to bring down President Trump. Going back to 2014 in a viral John McCain interview with Sean Hannity on Fox News, McCain actually admitted to meeting with ISIS and staying in contact with them. If you want to hear McCain himself making those admissions, you can hear them in the fourth video below. Knowing that McCain is still in Washington, D.C. should send out a huge alarm. In fact, his face should have been, or try that again, his face should have the very phrase term limit written all over it. Should America trust enemies of America within who have very clear ties to terror? Senator John McCain leading the way. If you're one of the still sleeping who believe that the U.S. would never have ties to terrorists, we ask you to please take a look at Hawaii Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard's Stop Arming Terrorists bill for clarification. When listening to Senator McCain's remarks in that fourth video, please keep in mind Gabbard's comments on her bill. And it reads, under U.S. law, it is illegal for any American to provide money or assistance to Al-Qaeda, ISIS, or other terrorist groups. If you or I gave money, weapons, or support to Al-Qaeda or ISIS, we would be thrown in jail. Yet the U.S. government has been violating this law for years, quietly supporting allies and partners of Al-Qaeda, ISIL, Jabhat Fateh al-Sham, and other terrorist groups with money, weapons, and intelligence support in their fight to overthrow the Syrian government. The CIA has also been funneling weapons and money through Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Qatar, and others who provide direct and indirect support to groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. This support has allowed Al-Qaeda and their fellow terrorist organizations to establish strongholds throughout Syria, including Aleppo. The news story from InfoWars reports that the Stop Soros movement is now sweeping Europe. The man largely behind the mass immigration of Muslims into Europe, even his own home country of Hungary, is making moves to eliminate all NGOs funded by globalist Soros. DC Clothesline reports that Stop Operation Soros, the massive operation to overthrow Soros' influence in Macedonia, has also recently exploded. While continuing to fund anarchists and the extreme left here in America in their protests against President Donald Trump, Europe have had enough of him. During a press conference last week, SOS founders called on all free-minded citizens, regardless of race, ethnicity, or religion, to fight against one-mindedness in the civil sector, which is devised and led by George Soros, the Verser newspaper reported. This move comes on the heels of the Hungarian government announcing that it will use all the tools at its disposal to target and sweep out all non-governmental organizations funded by Soros, a Hungarian-born financier who has become one of the U.S. Democratic Party major sources of funding, according to Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban's ruling party. Co-founder of the movement, Nikola Serbov, called on Soros for hijacking civil society in an effort to force his own personal ideology upon others by monopolizing civil discourse through strategically funding certain organizations by his group Open Society Foundations. In America, that Soros-funded groups are turning towards violence, as InfoWars reports. The Open Society Foundation, operating under the Soros umbrella, used its funding and personnel to support violent processes in Macedonia, he said in a press conference today. Acceptable and goes beyond the principles of civic organizing. Soros set up the Open Society Foundation in the 1980s with the stated goal of helping former Soviet bloc countries transition from communism. But in reality, the foundation is used to destabilize governments and foment discontent within countries. And while McCain is a Republican like Trump, he and Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina have come out against Trump's guns ablazing of a very concerted globalist snowflake effort to take down our 45th president. We're incredibly grateful for all of the good people surrounding Trump, ready to give their own lives if necessary to protect him from all the insanity that Soros, McCain, and the globalists have unleashed upon the world. In the closing comments, we'll give below Theodore Shubat. John McCain is no saint, and what we're clearly witnessing with his ties to Soros and other enemies within, and to ISIS terrorists who want to destroy us, a very real axis of evil is aligned against the American people, willing and ready to take America down to the level they lie on. According to Theodore Shubat, communists, or try that again, goodness gracious. According to Theodore Shubat, communications director for Rescue Christians, an organization that is on the ground in Muslim lands, rescuing Christians from persecution, and the author of 2 books, For God and Tyranny and In Satan's Footsteps, The Source and Interconnections of All Evil. And the quote is, John McCain is a giant bag of scum. His mouth is a continual sewer of bile. His heart is a decayed rot dung. His mind a river of filth. And his soul is amongst the damned. He is nothing but a murderous scumbag. His evils are so great that the words of Trump don't even bother me. McCain is a demon incarnate. His service in Vietnam does nothing to justify the evils he has supported and pushed for. And there's a list of videos here for you to view at your convenience. Gosh, I wish he would have told us what he really felt, don't you? My goodness. Okay, the next one here is off of thecommonsenseshow.com by Dave Hodges, and it says 40 men control the planet. It's Trump and you versus everyone else. And this is a fantastic article. If you want to see who's in charge, you need to pull this one up and take a look at some of the pictures, or I don't know exactly what you call them, the inserts that they have in this. This is really fantastic for explaining how this all works. Trump has a nearly impossible job. The Mexican president, Nito, spit in Trump's face yesterday. Mexico says that they will refuse to negotiate with Trump administration so long as they insist that Mexico will build the wall. The simple thing to do seems to consist of canceling NAFTA. Mexico enjoys a $60 million, $60 billion with a B, dollar trade surplus. They play home to millions of manufacturing jobs that used to go to Americans. Some economists will quietly say that this cost the United States almost $1 trillion a year. This means lower wages, higher taxes, and a declining standard of living for America. To add insult to injury, tens of millions of illegal immigrants that have flooded into America sent home $25 billion to Mexican private interests in 2015. This money is not taxed. The labor represented by this amount, which does not account for the under-the-table money that is sent to Mexico, is only a drop in the bucket conservatively, and this is a gross underrepresented representation of the actual money that America is bleeding. The labor represented in this amount is not taxed. None of this goes to unemployment compensation, workman's comp, or workers' comp, Social Security, and Medicare. This greatly increases the burden on American citizens to cover these needs. Mexico will never build a wall unless this movement of money is controlled and taxed. However, Trump is taking on an entire global economic empire. If you wondered why the media vilifies Trump at every turn, there are 6 owners of the entire media profit greatly from all free trade agreements. This is what Trump is trying to undo. However, what most Americans don't realize is that the entire American economy is controlled by a few men who control government and virtually every major industry in America. Below is just a partial snapshot of how monolithic the corporate interests that control our daily lives have become. Until Trump was elected, nothing ever happened without their approval. They own it, they control it all. Just take a look. And it says 6 corporations control almost everything that you hear, see, read, and ultimately think. The 6 masters of the media own all of the food, auto, big pharma, managed healthcare, clothing, etc. And It's GE, News Corp, Disney, Viacom, Time Warner, and CBS. And there's a list under each one of these of the stuff that they own. And I mean, it's, well, at least the notable properties. Let's put it that way. Just the notable properties that they own. GE has Comcast, NBC, Universal Pictures, and Focus Features. News Corp has Fox, Wall Street Journal, New York Post. Disney has ABC, ESPN, Pixar, Miramax, Marvel Studios. Viacom has MTV, Nick Jr., BET, CMT, Paramount Pictures. Time Warner has CNN, HBO, Time, and Warner Brothers. CBS has Showtime, Smithsonian Channel, NFL.com, Jeopardy, and 60 Minutes. Those are just the notable ones. Then underneath that is another picture here that has it even broken down further from the stuff that they own. And I mean, I can't even read all of this stuff. So if you want to see it, pull up that article. It'll be the second one under the URLs from today's video, and take a look at this. And then the next one is 14 corporations control almost everything you drive. And it has that picture. And then underneath that is another one. 10 corporations control almost everything you eat. That's PepsiCo, Nestle, Coca-Cola, Unilever, Danone, Mars, Moldenez, Associated British Foods, Kellogg's, and General Mills. And it has pictures here of everything that they have, all the foods that they control. It says, please keep in mind that this is just the tip of the iceberg. The entire American economy is owned by fewer than 40 men, except for the dwindling number of small businesses that were devastated by the Obama administration. These corporate giants dominate every aspect of your life, and they own the media that tells what to think and how to behave. They control the voting process that stole about 20% of the popular vote, yet they still could not defeat Donald Trump and the American people. Donald Trump can shut down NAFTA and cause Mexico to lose $60 billion a year in lost revenue, courtesy of the Americans, and they can be taxed on the $25 billion that leaves the country in the form of wire transfers from America to Mexico. However, it is critical to remember this is a drop in the bucket. These corporations benefit from bringing in cheap labor because they cannot export every job out of America. This is why we have massive illegal immigration. Your wages are lower and your working conditions are poor because the corporations have you where they want you. Ironically, they will never allow immigrants to become citizens because they don't want to pay employment costs of Medicare, Social Security, unemployment compensation, and workers' comp. The corporations are the biggest abusers of immigrants, and yet the media they control will never report it. For Trump to be successful in negating free trade agreements, he needs our help. Congress must be made to feel the heat. Any congressman supporting the anti-Trump movement needs to be removed from office because they are costing you and your kids a decent wage and standard of living. I have long advocated on shopping local, trading and bartering, and removing your participation as much as possible from the corporate-controlled economy. Eat out at Mel's Diner and not at Outback, for example. Go to Joe's Hardware Store and not to Ace Hardware. The American people are caught in a war. We face politicians who are bought and paid for by the very corporations that enslave us. We face a media that is relentless in their propaganda, and we have become conditioned to be apathetic and uninvolved. Trump can't do this alone. The next article I have for you is off of Breitbart.com, and it says, Media reports State Department mass resignation. Officials actually were fired. Today's fake news freakout began with buzzing swarm of headlines about mass resignations by the entire senior level of management officials at the State Department, resigning in some stunning act of protest against Donald Trump. Before long, we learned that we were talking about 4 people, and they did not resign, they were fired. The State Department entire senior management team just resigned, gasped the Washington Post, prompting a ripple of secondary headlines across media space. Some of those headlines were a bit more cautious, such as Jerusalem Post reporting that State Department team resigned in a possibly coordinated walkout. As it turns out, that walkout was coordinated by the Trump administration. From CNN's full story on the matter, all 4 career officers serving in positions appointed by the president submitted letters of resignation per tradition at the beginning of the new administration. The letters from the White House said that their resignations were accepted and they were thanked for their service. The White House usually asks career officials in such positions to stay on for a few months until their successors are confirmed. Any implications that these 4 people quit is wrong, one senior State Department official said. These people are loyal to the Secretary, the President, and to the State Department. There is just not any attempt here to diss the President. People are not quitting and running away in disgust. This is the White House cleaning house. These positions are political appointments and require the President to nominate and the Senate to confirm them in these roles. They are not career appointments, but of limited term, said State Department spokesman Mark Toner. Of the offices whose resignations were accepted, some will continue in the Foreign Service in other positions, and others will retire by choice or because they have exceeded the time limits of their grade in service. The entire senior management team suffering this mass obliteration consists of Assistant Secretary of State for Administration Joyce Ann Barr, Assistant Secretary of State for Consular Affairs Michelle Bond, Ambassador Gentry O. Smith of the Office of Foreign Missions, and most notably Undersecretary for Management Patrick Kennedy, who tried to drag the FBI into Hillary Clinton's cover-ups. Kennedy has also been accused of playing a role in the Benghazi disaster, although the State Department's internal review downplayed his role in the decision-making that led to the inadequate security posture in Benghazi, as the Washington Examiner recalls. The Examiner also notes his "you can't fire me, I quit" retirement was announced yesterday, so treating it like big news today is somewhat disingenuous. The Trump campaign said that Kennedy had to go and called in vain, of course, on Hillary Clinton to speak out against him as well. This is not some shocking walkout by a defiant resistance speaking truth to power. It is President Trump fulfilling a campaign promise on his 4th day in office. Also, while most news reports described 4 outgoing officials as holding their offices under both Republican and Democrat administrations to promote the impression they were nonpartisan fixtures of the bureaucracy who just couldn't handle the arrival of President Trump, that is really only true of Kennedy, and he was only in position for 2 years before the Obama administration began. Joyce Barr was appointed in 2011, while Michelle Bond and Gentry Smith were appointed in 2015. The Hill reports that these 4 joined a number of other officials who have departed since President Trump took office last week, but goes on to cite only 2 names: Assistant Secretary of State for Diplomatic Security Gregory Starr, who retired, and Bureau of Overseas Building Operations Linda Munzes. CNN notes that Starr only came out of retirement in 2012 and planned all along to retire at the end of the Obama administration, even if Hillary Clinton won the 2016 election. The American Foreign Service Association also shot down the narrative about mass resignations. While this appears to be a large turnover in a short period of time, a change of administration always brings personnel changes, and there is nothing unusual about rotations or retirements in foreign service. Indeed, both are essential to the development of a steady stream of experienced leaders ready to assume critical roles at state. Given the talent available in our diplomatic corps, we expect that the new secretary will have no trouble finding the right people at state to fill this senior leadership team, the AFSA added, referring to Secretary of State nominee Rex Tillerson, who still awaits a final confirmation vote. The New York Daily News falsely implied Tillerson's visit to the State Department on Wednesday actually prompted the walkouts that didn't happen, adding another prime clipping to the day's scrapbook of fake news. All of these folks are entitled to their opinions just like anyone else, and if they are profoundly displeased by the election of Donald Trump, they are free to say so. The American people are equally entitled to wonder if the State Department should have so many partisan officials, and to look back on the long record of scandals and cover-ups in the Obama State Department as justification for vigorous house cleaning. The next article I have is off of Natural News, and it says, huge threat to scientific freedom. Scientists under attack after exposing industry secrets about GMOs. The integrity of science is founded upon the ability of researchers to freely ask questions without fear of retribution. But does this freedom actually exist? Not for those who challenge powerful industries like biotechnology and genetic engineering, warns the award-winning documentary Scientists Under Attack, Genetic Engineering in the Magnetic Field of Money by German director Bertram Verhaag. One question means one career, says UC Berkeley professor Ignacio Chapela, one of the scientists featured in the film. You ask one question, you get an answer, and you might or might not be able to publish it, but that is the end of your career. Another scientist featured in the film, Dr. Arpad Pastazzi, a world expert in the plant or on the plant defensive chemical known as lictins. In 1998, Pastazzi did a television interview in which he spoke of forthcoming research showing that rats fed potatoes genetically modified with a lectin form snowdrops grew poorly and had immune dysfunction compared with rats fed unmodified potatoes. According to some commentators, the controversy that erupted played a key role in turning British public opinion against GM foods. It also destroyed Pastazzi's career. Pastazzi noted that the results of his research could not be explained by the lectins themselves, which showed no ill effects in rats even at very high doses. He suggested that the genetic modification had caused some other change in the potatoes, perhaps reducing the nutrient value. The biotech industry went on attack. Newspaper articles published a false claim that the potatoes had been modified from a poisonous jack bean, a claim that GM scientists used to discredit the research to this day. This lie was later repeated in a press release by the Rowett Research Institute, Pastazzi's employer. The institute fired Pastazzi, seized his research, and banned him from speaking publicly. The Royal Society conducted an analysis of raw data not intended for publication and declared it invalid. The study was later published using only data collected by co-researcher Stanley Ewan, who had not worked for the Rowett, who did not work for Rowett. Because of the controversy, the paper received 3 times the normal number of peer reviews. It was approved and published in the prestigious journal, The Lancet. But Pastazzi's career in science was over. I would have characterized his treatment as disgraceful, Ewan said. I don't see how any reputable scientist could be treated in this way. Chapela's case, while less influential, has been widely regarded as an example of the intersection between politics and science, and actually began years before his groundbreaking research was published. In 1997, Chapela created a media scandal by publicly opposing an agreement between the University of Berkeley, his employer, and biotech company Novartis, his former employer. Under an agreement, Novartis would donate $500,000 in exchange for the rights to a third of the university biotech research. My gut reaction was that the company was trying to buy the university, Chapela said. Then in 2001, Chapela published an article in Nature showing that genes from GMO corn, or maize, grown in the United States were present in wild maize in Oaxaca, Mexico, in the very area where maize had initially evolved. This implied that hundreds of species and thousands of years of genetic diversity were at risk. The Mexican government itself went after Chapela, with both agriculture and biosecurity officials trying to stop the article's publication. When that failed, 2 of the people who had supported the Berkeley Novartis deal sent letters to Nature attacking Chapella's research. Nature published a statement just one step shy of a retraction and urged Chapella to recant, but he stood by his research. When Chapella came up for tenure in 2003, he was unanimously recommended by the tenure committee, but the university still denied him. Following public outrage, he was eventually granted tenure in 2005. He would be vindicated again in 2009 when another researcher published a study in molecular ecology confirming the presence of transgenes in Mexican maize. It's good to see this, but it took 7 years, Chapella noted. So sometimes vindication comes, but it takes its dear sweet time. The next one that we have here is also of natural news, and it says Big Pharma's synthetic cannabis pills are killing people, yet authentic marijuana is still criminalized. Leave it to Big Pharma to find a way to turn a natural, effective, plant-based healing substance into something patentable and deadly. That's right. The guys in the pharmaceutical labs are so desperate to develop a drug that delivers the same therapeutic benefits as cannabis under their own exclusive money-making patent, of course, that they don't mind if a few people die along the way. That's what happened last year in France when a clinical trial involving a synthesized laboratory drug designed to stimulate the body's in endocannabinoid, I think that's how it's pronounced, receptor system, left 6 people hospitalized, one of whom was later declared brain dead. The pharmaceutical industry has long been the business of isolating synthesized and the active ingredient of medicinal plants and patenting the resulting drugs so that the huge profits can be made. And they often look to governments to aid them in obtaining exclusive rights and eliminating competition. When government-connected industries wish to be shut out their competition, which in this case is a plant, they lean on the state's ability to stifle competition through claiming a right to the intellectual property behind a particular set of ingredients, otherwise known as a patent. Since no one can patent a wild plant, pharmaceutical industries turn to the labs and chemistry to recreate nature. But to reproduce the wide-ranging and nearly miraculous therapeutic properties of cannabis in a laboratory is no simple task. The effects of cannabis on the human body are very complex, and there are many active components contained within the plant. Scientists have only recently discovered that what is called the endogenous cannabinoid system, or ECS. And it's the key to how and why cannabis works so well to alleviate pain and even cure many illnesses. Cannabis medications work so effectively because of the endocannabinoid, or EC system, present in all human and many animals as well. This system consists of a series of receptors that are configured only to accept cannabinoids, especially tetrahydrocannabinol. Now that is a mouthful, and it's abbreviated THC. The cannabinol, CBD, and the cannabinol CBD. There we go. The way this system works is just beginning to be understood, and the death and hospitalizations that occurred is one drug company rushed to test its own lab-based synthetics ECS stimulant is a testament to the fact that we simply don't understand the endogenous cannabinoid system well enough yet to begin subjecting humans to experimental drugs designed to affect it. What we do know, however, is that the whole cannabis plant delivers all of the therapeutic benefits without any dangerous side effects. The fact scares the hell out of the pharmaceutical industry because they are seeing people discarding pain pills and other drugs in favor of natural remedy that costs nothing to grow. That's also why Big Pharma is continuing to put pressure on the government to keep marijuana classified as a dangerous drug and to stifle research into the use of the natural plant as opposed to dangerous government-approved chemical drug research and development. Fortunately, the prohibition of marijuana is failing, as more and more studies confirm the therapeutic benefits of the plant itself, and the old attitudes and stigma regarding marijuana begin to fade into the past. It will be difficult to continue convincing the public that the plant should be outlawed and that only government-approved cannabis substitutes should be made available. But the battle isn't over yet. We as citizens must continue to demand the right to have access to cannabis and to be able to grow it at home. Until the federal government completely legalizes marijuana and removes it from the list of controlled substances, the fight isn't over. Big Pharma's chemical version of cannabis is not an acceptable substitute for the real thing. Just like that old commercial used to say, give me the real thing, baby. And there you have that episode. If you like what I'm doing here, give it a thumbs up. Share it on your social media so everybody gets to hear the news. Subscribe if you haven't done that yet. And there's a little bell beside that subscription button. If you click that, check the box, you'll get email alerts every time I put up a show, and you'll stay informed.